Welcome to the Unpublic. It is Freedom Friday, and today we have Sharif El Mekki, as always, on every Friday to learn, to laugh, to discover, to uncover things in our own history that help us advance as a people. Brother El Mekki, good morning.
Good morning, man. Happy Friday. Last Friday in January. We'll see you on the other side next time we come together.
Yeah, you know what's about to happen. We're about to go into that thing
Yeah.
called Black History Month, right?
Exactly. Like,
Which,
here's your
which
thing.
Which can we just, define Black History Month as Black History for White People Month? Because it's
Mm.
not our History Month, really, honestly.
And only a certain part
this
of
is,
our history is for that, right? Like they were like,
yeah,
no, 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 we don't want any of that.
we
Just
don't
give
want
us,
it.
give us
Don't
a
give us that
little,
Malcolm stuff.
yeah, give
Yeah,
us a little Dr. King, and sprinkle some Rosa Parks, and then by then February will be over. We'll throw some slavery in there too.
because we know that Black history started with slavery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
And I
know,
realize that
um,
interrupted our history. Not that isn't our history. That's what
That's an
interrupted it.
interruption. You know what? This is what I think. I am a contrarian at heart. So my contrarian self. This happens to me every year too. By the way, Sharif, where
Mm-hmm.
I miss the important days because I refuse to write on those days.
Mm-hmm.
Like I refuse to write a MLK thing unless someone makes me in some kind of way.
Right, right,
Or
right.
Black History. I'll wait until March to do Black History, and I'll boycott all month, right? And the reason I do it is I honestly think we should stop. Y'all weren't with me
I
when I said
remember
this
we had
before.
no. I
So
remember we had, but no. Share with this audience in case they weren't there for.
I was like, we should stop celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday because it's not, number one, it's not Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday. It's a federal holiday that has now become somewhat of a mockery of. It's where everything that he was for or against, he was against militarism,
Mm,
racism, poverty. All of those things now are the people who push militarism, racism, and poverty celebrate Martin Luther King's
yeah.
holiday, and they don't do anything to confront militarism, racism, and poverty on that day. So I thought, well, let's just stop doing it until we decide that it's going to be a day where we're all going to fight those three things on that day. Like on that day, what are we going to do on that day to stop militarism? Like, we're going to surround the Pentagon. Who knows? No, no, listen,
Listen, don't
I didn't
start.
say that. Yeah, I was about to say, I'm just throwing out like possibilities. That's all I'm saying.
I mean,
So
that's what they man, them jokers messed up direct. They ain't messed it up. We'll reclaim it, but they using direct action for some old madness. You know what I mean? Like this is the stuff that just pisses me off. Like that's the white privilege piece. You want some old ranky dank leader who extols you to go do some nonsense on some lies, and we're do direct action on like stop murdering us, stop murdering our
I
children,
know.
fund our schools. And but
Please.
the white supremacist structure will lump it all together. Like they
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
wait. They're like, you know what? We'll actually just use the same response. People are like, oh, we didn't respond well. Now we're going to respond well, right? And they're just going to lump it
Mm.
all together. They're not going to see the difference, and they're going to enjoy not seeing the difference. And so, yeah.
Well, ignorance about Black people's true intention for freedom is self protective mechanism. To pretend
Hmm.
like you don't
Hmm.
understand why Black people are fighting for something
Hmm.
that makes them free actually is a way to keep paying yourself. Let me
Yeah.
just pretend like I don't know why you guys are fighting for
Hmm.
freedom. Because if I pretend like I don't know, then I'm good. I'm cool. I can just keep my structures in place the way that they are. Well, good morning, fam. I see Mama Toya and
Mama Toya,
Michelle Johnson's here.
Dr.
Taji
Johnson.
Reed Marshall is here.
Oh yeah,
The family is coming together. So good morning,
squad,
fam.
squad.
Thank y'all. I appreciate you all for being here for another Freedom Friday. Apparently, you want Black people to be free. I'm going to raise a premise today, and let's just roll with it because I actually did an interview with Reason Magazine, who's a longtime favorite of mine, libertarian outlet and magazine. Everybody knows that I am a libertarian. I am a black libertarian. I like liberty. I like freedom. I hate people telling me what to do. I hate people telling me what I can drink, eat, smoke, how I can live, how I can walk, who I can love. I hate people trying to take my money and make me pay for things I don't want to pay for, like tanks and armies and wars against people in other parts of the world that I don't think we need to be warring with. And if you agree with what I just said, you are a libertarian too. You just don't know it.
Just don't know it.
You just don't know it. But let's start with this. It's school choice week. And I made the ominous kind of, and this is like, so y'all watching, I know you're going to disagree with me already. So like, listen, come with it. Come with it. I don't care. So here's the thing. I said that I think that school choice is actually the most important issue in Black America. And my quick justification for that statement this week in a couple of interviews that I gave, my quick justification was all issues that we are fighting with in terms of advancement for Black people have their roots in K-12 education, meaning if we are lopsided in the number of the amount of ownership, for instance, or income inequality, or not making it into certain fields, right? Like every third day we get like it's the first Black woman ever in the physics department at such and such a university. It's the first one at and you're like, really, damn.
And it ain't just deep south, right? Like it could be as far northeast as you want to go, or west as you want to go.
I would love someone in the comments probably knows about this more than I do, but there are some fields where there have been no Black people yet to get a PhD in those fields, right? Like none. So when you see somebody come through, there's still a lot more where there hasn't been like a Black woman to come through. So you'll see somebody say that they offered the first PhD to a Black woman in something science or whatever. My point about that in saying is, almost all of our organizations don't have a K-12 education agenda or tab, even when you go to their list of issues. They have criminal justice, they have the environment, they have jobs. And guess what? All of those things are dependent on K-12 education. Well,
it's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. And the biggest issue to me in K-12 education is residential assignment. Letting the government assign you to a school is one of the worst ways to get an education in the United States, because the government's system or algorithm, let's call it an algorithm, it's an anti-nigger machine. That's what the American public education algorithm is, because it puts you, it assigns you, me and you, to this. It assigns some other special people to that. Even when we get in the same building, it assigns us different tracks, right? So you are tracked. You are like programmed by the government with an algorithm. So school choice week to me just seems to be like the most important thing that we could participate in. Okay, fight me. All right, let's hear it, El.
I'm trying to think what the fuck. So my only, sometimes the only pause I would give is that, if we say it is the single most important, I also believe that it takes other things. But I do think that there are too many civil rights organizations, too many nonprofit. There are too many people who don't center education. I think education is the nucleus, and then the other things also have to be addressed, right? Like, so if it's a great education for a first grader, but the parent, the landlord keeps raising rent, or it's asbestos and lead in the in the house. If they have to keep moving, if all those other things, I think we got to play, and that's the only part I'd be nervous about. But I 100% agree that education is the nucleus. It is one of the components of making sure that people do not have freedom or liberty. It is grounded in education. And so I 100% agree that a lot of people ignore this. They don't want to do it, or they talk out of both sides of their mouths about it. And so, hey, a perfect example, there's, school board was grilling our superintendent on reading. And yes, like it is absolutely, there are horrific numbers. These same people will fight you on Black parents choosing a school. They will fight them on having options. They will not look into, the deeper things. So they're saying like, hey, we have a new platform, we have these new guidelines, and so that's what we're looking at. Black and brown kids struggling in reading, special ed kids and English language learners have been struggling in reading, like my entire life. Right. And so what have you done? Don't just, what have you done as a collective? And when people are trying to exercise different opportunities and options, why are you fighting them so hard? Why are you keeping them in the cage and like improve the cage? Like that's what it almost sounds like to me.
Improve the cage.
Improve the cage. Like it doesn't make sense. Like if we're about the learning, then let's just make sure all the Philly kids are learning, and then let's figure that out. And they think that, and so, we have a couple members on the school board that are just deeply problematic.
Well, let's run through some of the things, like you bring up school choice. Let's just run through some of the things that people push back on. What good is school choice if you don't have any good choices?
Well, I mean, I would say two things. One, that speaks to we need to. It's not a flat conversation, right? Like we need choices and we need better schools. Like if you're lifting both of those things up, then it's that. And having bad choices, I think is problematic, and I think that happens in too many spaces. But to me, that's not. You don't fight choice because you don't have good choices.
Because the choices aren't optimal.
The choices aren't there. You improve the choices. Like that's the argument, And I think sometimes it's a shell game of like, oh, there's, we fought we're not going to create more options. And a lot of times the lack of options, when they say there's no other options, they're usually talking about for Black and brown people, because white folks still find choices. So when the people in Philly say there's no good options, I'm like, then where are all the white people in this district?
And you know what?
Somebody got a eject button.
I'm going to stop giving it just to the white folks too. Black folks
middle class.
Money, middle class Black people with money are hiding their kids away just like anybody else in places where we can't get to if you don't have resources or money.
Affluence or influence, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have Black cities that have entire suburbs that are Black now. Let's not forget that Black people themselves are also and those will be the first Negroes. They will be the first ones to come with some stupid, we got to support our traditional public schools.
Where you kid at, Joker?
That's exactly. Ask every Black politician in the United States, where are you putting your child right now? Because I can guarantee you it's not the worst performing school in your city. I can guarantee you that school where you are saying we need to just support them. We shouldn't close our schools. We shouldn't blah, blah. First of all, Negro, these aren't our schools if kids can't read. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as a Black school that's ours. Where Black children aren't doing well, like that's somebody else's school. That's a government school. It's like the projects. It's like claiming the projects. Like you can't tear down our projects, fool. I'm trying to get us in houses, right? I'm trying to have us own something in the United States. All right, so we shouldn't have choices. What good is school choice if there are no good choices? And a lot of that is the New Orleans argument, because New Orleans, as a now choice system in a lot of ways, still has a lot of F&D schools, right? So the argument you will hear for some people is like, well, what good was it to switch to this if we're still going to have so many F&D schools? I think I agree with you, Sharif, that that's not a reason to say like, okay, well, we haven't formed enough great choices yet, so let's just stop choice. Because to me, it's like, what's the opposite? Anti-choice, right? Like you don't have any choice, you're just stuck with what you got. That to me seems to be a worse possibility.
And there's very few track records that people, if you don't expand options and opportunity, if your premise isn't improving schools, that's problematic. If you think that, the only way to improve schools is to, continue to do what we're doing, which hasn't worked for generations, like show me the city that Black and brown kids are thriving, and then we can look at that model and just use that. We don't even have to argue. I really don't care. Show me the city, show me the district where they have a substantial number of poor Black, brown, immigrant, whoever the society says is, can be thrown away. can be marginalized for their entire lives. Wherever they're doing great, let's replicate it, 100 times. The problem is America has not dedicated themselves to addressing the needs of these communities. And so we're not going to see any progress in just the status quo. It's not built for that, right? Like I saw you tweeted the other day where it's like, you know what? The system is working with perfect precision. We got to stop saying it's broken. It ain't broken. It's not broken. It worked for a certain group of population in the early 1900s. It worked for a certain group of the population in the 1950s. It worked in the same population in the 80s and now. And it hasn't it hasn't been, shaken up a whole lot of ways. The same group has been doing well.
So let's move on to another myth then. I don't even know if I'd call it a myth, but another point of pushback that you get. You bring up school choice, and these are the pieces of pushback you get. So Nick Gillespie from Reason Magazine retweeted the interview that I did with him where I was saying that school choice is the most important Black America issue that there is. And Diane Ravitch, the paleo-liberal Diane Ravitch, polemicist, former historian Diane Ravitch chimed in with an article basically saying school choice is a scam. It causes segregation. It was invented by racist Southern segregationist. That was her pushback. So one, I want to dive in on that fallacy a little bit, or whatever you would call it. I will call it a fallacy, first of all, because people listening, let's stick with logical fallacies for a second. That's called the genetic fallacy. That means that just because something had an origin that was bad means that it's still that bad origin today. So by that logic, many things in the United States that were invented by racist people would be invalid. Right? Like it's possible that the computer I'm using right now was invented by a racist, so therefore computers are bad, right? All of the framers of the Constitution were racist. So there wasn't a single non-racist in that room. So I guess we could say that the Constitution is bad because, it has an origin that we don't like. All right, Sharif. School choice is just a way for Southern segregationists to segregate themselves. So what do we do about that one?
Yeah, I mean, I still go back to, Ravitch is one of the fakest historians. She's, I want my historians to be like Dr. Greg Carr. Like, that's the type of historian I rock with. Like, her understanding, it's such a white lens, right? Like, she can't even see other perspectives. Like, her argument, the first thing I would ask her, the same thing I would teach my 8th graders when I was a social studies teacher, is whose voice is missing in that argument, whose experience is missing in that argument, and whose perspective. So when she says, the idea of school choice is only created by that, what about after enslavement, when white people were coming from the North to come teach in the South, and they ran into places where, the Black family was like, no, I'm sending my kid to the Black family, who knows a little. They may not read as well as you. They may not have that degree. They have a high school degree. They didn't graduate from Oberlin or wherever, but they know enough to teach my kid. To me, that's the first in our community. That was school choice then, because the white folks were some of them, and some of them came down, did work. Black kids went through all of that. There were some who were frustrated and it's like, why won't these Black families send their kid to our school? It's a little better. Why are they sending them to,
now Sharif, when Betsy DeVos said this, she got in a lot of trouble. So there's two things I want to challenge in what you just said. The first one is you said, like, Diane Ravitch has such the white lens on what she's saying. And I just want to correct that and say, she has a paleo-liberal white lens, which means she comes from a very specific political location because some of her biggest opponents are white folks. So watching that thread, the thread was about me, about the interview I had, but the thread was mostly white. The majority of people chiming in were white. Yeah. And she was losing, right? Like, because the white folks were like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, and no one does know what she's really talking about, because let's just be real. She exercised school choice herself. Her kids went to private schools.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Her grandchildren are either in private school or public schools that are so exclusive that they should be private. right?
Yep, more
So
private than a private.
yeah, so come on, let's call a thing a thing. I was about to say a spade, but I guess it's the wrong show for this. You're gonna catch me on that one. So, anyways, such a the white on white crime in school choice is real, right? Because her side is like, oh, we don't need no choices, but this is the
while
right
they
wing,
exercise it,
right? Like the biggest, I think, frauds are white Americans who hold this save our schools stuff. Save our schools, fight the man, fight the power, fight corporate America, take over reform of our schools, blah, 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 blah. Let me look at the patterns of how you enroll into schools, and what you will find are large swaths of white islands. Islands that somehow are just weird. It's just weird how they're zoned a certain way, and
it's like education gerrymandering, right?
That's exactly what it is. Redlining on purpose. But they love them some public schools. Well, of course you love. No, you don't love public schools. You love your social advantage and position within it. The way that you always say that people are looking for better position within white supremacy. Like there are black people that don't want to end it. They just want a better position within it.
Yep.
That's how white folks are in public education. Let me ask you if this analogy works for you, because I thought about this last night. So right now in the stock market, there are all these people that are on Reddit and other social media who are banding together to buy certain stocks that are meant to go, the stocks themselves are terrible, they're bad, the companies are going under. But if you surge all these people into it, they're beating the hedge fund managers who are betting on those stocks to lose.
Right.
So now the hedge fund managers who have been rigging this system for years, have been rigging the economic system for years, are now like, no, y'all can't do that, because now you're rigging the system, but you're the people. So they want it stopped. They want to stop trading and whatever.
You're like, you're undermining our power.
You're undermining our power. And I wonder if public education, the people we just mentioned, are like the hedge fund people of education. They got a good position. They're rigging the system to their benefit. Like they get the best neighborhood schools, they get the best resources, the best books, the best everything. And here comes some people, ragtag army, coming along talking about choice. No, we want to bust it up. We want ours too. And they're like, no, freeze. Right. Right. Like, so they are kind of like the hedge fund managers of the education system. They've got a good position. They like it. They have control over it. And maybe that's why they don't want us to have choice.
Listen, I think still goes back to power, right? Like, I don't know if I get the stock market analogy.
I know it was a little tough. I'm still gonna work on it.
You tweeted one with this lady in the car explaining it. I was more confused after. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, bet Chris tweeted this out. I'm going to understand what the hell is going on, because I just saw in the, you just have the tickler like, oh, Reddit and this and that. And I was like, I don't know, and I haven't had time to dive into it. So I was like, oh, here's a quick upload. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that? I need that minute back. But I think like what you described, it reminds me of like Penn Alexander. And I've told you the story, in Philly before. This is, if you look at, and Zach Wright has written about it a few times, because he was living right outside of the catchment. And so it was interesting, as he was looking for a house and a school for his child, right outside the catchment of a school that was in a black neighborhood before it was gentrified. But University of Penn said, oh, we'll help it. We'll give more money. And this is the thing about it. The same folks who were, Red for Ed and Friends of, whatever school and all those groups, they had no problem with Penn investing more money in the school. So the university was doing it. Oh, it's fine. Other people do it. No, well, we got to look and trace. Like, why aren't you looking and tracing where Penn's money is? The endowment that doesn't pay taxes in Philadelphia, right? Like bring that same energy. But no, because you see some of them like, where do you live? Oh, I live in Clark Park. I live there. So yeah, I'm not. And you know what? I actually want my kid to go to Penn Alexander. You see the rates of black kids plummet in that school. You see the housing around the school, or I should say renting, because over half, about half of the black community in Philadelphia rent. They don't own their homes. So that's another indication, right? That you opened up the show with, the landlords were like, oh, we can get more money because this area is being gentrified, so we're going to raise the rent. So what happens? Those families have to move, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, this is for Penn's professors. These are schools for Penn's professors, and so this is their. So yeah, we're investing in school, but was it with the purity of heart? Was it for the purity of intention to, oh yeah, let's support the Black children when you look back at it? Or is it like, hey, let's invest in this, let's elevate everything because we know that we're going to have a whole lot of seats for our squad, right? And so when Wright would write his blogs about his experience and see that, oh, my house on this side of the street, that zone back to redlining to go to this other school, it's one thing. But trying to get into that other one, the cost and everything else. And it's just like, this is what families go up against. And then those same people, I see them talking about, no, we shouldn't have choice. We should stick with the system. The system is rigged in their behalf. And yes, they will continue to fight for whatever is rigged in their behalf. Chad sent me an article. Afterwards I'll put it on the, I'll put this in the link for the audience, but it's on Medium. It's called Unpacking the False Allyship of White Racial Justice Leaders.
Wow.
Unpacking the false allyship of white racial justice leaders.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll put it. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I love the example you just gave because now I know that it's a trend. Because you just said that about Penn. I know for a fact in New Orleans, like the Tulane professors always had a school called Lusher. And that was their public school, and maybe a few Negroes got in, but it was a public school. It was a great public school. Today, it's one of the best charter schools in the city because it's still Lusher of what it was before, even though it's a charter now. And no one had a problem back then that there was a school that was exclusive and excluding that one, but that was for professors. In Minneapolis, there's a school called Pratt, which I was a big supporter of, a very big supporter of, but it was built for U of M professors. Wasn't built for them, but you know what I mean. Kind of they knew who was going to be the main parents there. Yeah. But it was also built because of those professors who were very liberal and very in the 70s, they were having all these experiments with education. They built it right between where they lived and where there was a housing project so that it would draw both groups of students in. And when I came on the school board in Minneapolis, it was the most integrated of all the schools. It was not big, but there were professors' kids sitting right next to kids from the projects in the same school, and they were having very similar outcomes. And our district wanted to close that school. And I remember saying, why would you close a school where the Black kids are actually doing the best? What is wrong with you people? And it was like, oh, but it's too small. There's too few of them in that building. And, it was only, by this point, it was only like 140 kids. And I was like, you got a building that has 140 kids in it where the Black kids are doing well. You have buildings that have 1,000 kids in them where everybody's failing.
That one open.
I was about to say, I'm going to need you to reassess your priorities about closing. All right. So, we did have a note that from Michelle Johnson she said, let's go back to segregation.
Oh, yeah. I was just about to bring that up.
When is it negative and when is it positive? Should we use that dichotomy? My quick answer on it just is quick. So I'll quickly shift to you on this question of segregation. You bring up school choice. Segregation comes up quickly because of what we said about Diane Ravitch and others. They use segregation as a way to beat you back. Segregationists used to use school choice too. I believe in free association. I believe that I get to hang with the people I want to hang with. And I am a big fan of bigots going to school together. I am a big fan of bigot schools. I love bigot academies. Put them all together, all the bigots. And whenever they want to do a Million Moron March again, I'm all for it. So I am a fan of bigot academies, right? So that's my quick answer to it is I'm a fan of HBCUs, of Black student unions, of Black empowerment groups, of groups that see solidarity, Black solidarity and collectivism. So I support that. I want to be able to go wherever I want to go and hang with who I want to hang with. And I support racist schools. I would love me a white supremacist academy. I would love it if they just called it that, white supremacist academy, so you could see who goes there. like make it visible, right? Stop hiding. All right. So anyways, what do you think, brother?
I think you're crazy, but you know, I think, we talk about this a lot. They love to use the word segregation when it comes to black people, right? Like they don't ever talk about like white people only live with themselves. We're talking about like general overall, they live with themselves. They didn't care about it. White flight in just about every major urban city. They don't care about that. When they're gentrifying and there's predominantly those white circles around the school, they don't care about segregation. The money, the economic system in this country ain't nothing segregated like the dollars in America, right? Because we don't see it in our communities. We don't see that all that, development and investment. That's segregation. To me, that's, nobody wants to focus on that. It comes up when you talk about, hey, I need a better option for my child to get educated. I need to figure something else out. I need something else. They're like, oh, they end up being more segregated. Like, listen, the system in this country is segregated, is tilted toward one particular group of folks. If I choose a space for my child that is going to improve their chances of surviving this system, to be full, to be whole, and it tends to be black because they're also going to be affirmed in that space, man. Like that's exactly what I want. And I think we have to be careful with the terms they use and push back, right? Because that Diane and plenty of others talk about that a lot. And I'm like, yo, you live in a segregated.
So you're not for white supremacist academies?
I think some of them are already. I don't know. I don't want to give them license.
They are, but I think they should name that.
They should name them. Just be clear. Make it plain. Make it plain.
Yes. The Aryan Academy of Anglonesia.
If they name it, some in many ways they have named them in different. It's some of that stuff where they hide it right in front of your face.
Yes.
You never see that stuff. It's like, oh yeah, no, this means something. But you're like, no, your track record, your history, what you're doing right now. This is white supremacy, but they love word games. They love word games.
No one's going to join me on that one. That actually is I'm joking about it, but it does come from a quote. I was testifying in a court hearing here in Minnesota. We have a lawsuit, and this is the lawsuit in Minnesota. The lawsuit is a segregation or integration lawsuit by two white men who have long track records in fighting school choice and fighting charter schools because they say it will segregate, and they're just about integration is the only way. That's what they say. So they're arguing in court that you can't get an education as a person of color in Minnesota unless you're in schools with white kids. And it's the government's duty to make sure that there are no, like we have some schools that are like the Hmong Academy, which is, mostly Hmong students with some black students in it. We have Best Academy, which is a African-American school. We have Global Academy, which is a Somali charter school. And their attorney on their side, who actually had been one of my supporters years ago, their attorney asked me, so Chris, I'm taking it that you would be okay if there was, a group of white supremacists that wanted to start a school, you would just be like, that's okay. And that was my response. I was like, you're not going to like my answer. But my answer is yes. It would do me a service if they could all go to school together. Like if I can see them all go to school together, that actually would be good for me if all the white supremacists were in one place.
Keep them away from your kids.
Keep them away from my kid. Because right now, you forcing my kid into buildings with people that are a little sus when it comes to the racial stuff is not good for me. I just don't want us. There's no reason for us to all be pushed together. We're not meant to go to school together. Not all of us.
Apparently in this country. We're not meant to lead together. We're not meant to share power together, right? Because it's already what's more segregated than some of these boardrooms, some of these, whatever the bastions of power. What's more segregated than that? But you're spending all the time just talking about the kids, and you don't care how segregated the parents are and all the decisions that they broker based on the segregation that they have. Yeah. What they said, Dr. King said, that's the most segregated time in America is right.
Sunday. Sunday at noon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So segregation, moving on from segregation, let's move on to school choice. Siphons money and students away from traditional public schools. And traditional public schools are the cornerstone of democracy. So school choice must be a plot to destroy good public schools. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the one I hear the most. And I think it's, for me, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of, what school funding is supposed to be. Like we all know, it's not in the U.S. Constitution, which means it goes to the state. The state is responsible for the education of its citizens. If we look at the learning as the most important, then the money is for student learning, regardless of where that is. Like, I think that, and we spoke about this in some places, if I homeschooled my children, my mother homeschooled, some of her children. Why wouldn't she, if she's educated, she's like, you know what, government, I don't need you to do that. I am going to do this. Why wouldn't she receive the per pupil funding to educate her child, to make sure that they have the resources, that they're able to do whatever trips and experiences and opportunities and everything else to do that? And I don't hear them talk about the money when white flight, that takes money away from school systems.
Mm-hmm.
When so many of, in Philly, probably like other places, because I used to wonder when I was a kid, I'm like, where do the white kids go to school? Like, even before that, when I would catch the bus, sometimes I would catch the bus to school, and I would see all these kids in uniforms, and I was like, dang, that's where the white kids are. Like, they would all be waiting for the bus. They'd be going to private schools and parochial schools. If they transferred out or they never came, that means that money never, the state didn't send it to the city, right? It was like, oh, that child is not there. That's child number 101. 101 either never came to the public school system or exited. That if they came in, there would be more money, right? But no, there's no appeal besides creating magnet schools or those gentrified areas to make them come back. What about their money? Like, bring all the white, what would invest in schools? Bring all the white children back to these large urban districts, make them go to public schools. That's all. And just imagine how many of them per pupil allotment that's good. That's a whole lot more dollars. So
okay,
make that your argument.
I know you messing with people now, right? Because listen,
they mess with me. I might as well mess with them.
I love it. This is the way that we should do public policy. Okay. Let's make what you just said the policy. That, first of all, if you really are about fully funding schools, there is nothing that fully funds a school like your child in it. So all these half-empty urban failing schools, we're going to need you white people to stop talking about it and start walking about it. So start bringing your kids back. And if you don't do it, we're going to force you to put your kids in these half-empty failure factories in black neighborhoods because you want to fully fund public education. There is nothing that fully funds public education like a little white boy or a white girl in your school. That fully funds everything. So we're going to
follow the money.
Follow the
white child.
Follow the white child. You will find the money. So nothing. You want to fully fund schools? Cool. Let's do it. We're going to bring all your kids back into the city, into these schools. And at the same time, we're going to give all the black kids choice to go wherever they want. Freedom of choice. If they want to go 50 miles into the whitest of white suburbs, we're going to bus them. We're going to give them the money to do it. And let that go for about 2 years and it'll be all over with, right? The whole, let's fully fund our schools. First of all, where are our schools? Where are the schools that you and I own together, right? So you don't buy this one, though. You don't buy the let me be fair to the argument. Let's back up, Sharif. Let's be fair to the argument. Whole bunch of black people even leave. White people left Detroit public schools, for instance. I think it was like 150,000 stood up and walked out during DSEG. That's a lot of kids. Like a school system that loses 150,000 families is doomed, right? So that's the first wave. The second wave is like, black folks with a little something looking around like, well, wait a second, now where the white folks done gone? Well, I guess I gotta go somewhere too. So then they leave.
Why y'all leave me with them? You left me with them.
So they leave too, and now you're left with, what's the aftermath, right? So, and that could be a story of Gary, Indiana, and Chicago, and Milwaukee, and Oakland, and some southern places, maybe Atlanta, except for Atlanta, kept a critical mass of people, but
Cleveland, Philly.
I mean, there is something that happens in schools when people leave. I mean, look at the Detroit public schools now, right? I mean, it's almost making it look good to go back to the days where they had a corrupt school board that were going to jail for stuff, and they had more students, right? Oh, you don't remember this? Oh my God. Their school board president went to jail. Several other of their school board members. The same thing happened in New Orleans. People don't like to talk about it. Bruh, New Orleans, I just want to keep bringing this up. Some of y'all know me for a long time. You've been listening to me for a long time, so you've heard me say the same stories over and over again. I'm not going to stop saying these ones. In New Orleans, the public schools, the day before Katrina, the public schools in New Orleans were so corrupt and so bad that the FBI had an office in the school district. They had to put an office actually in the school district.
That's how busy they were.
Wow. Even a year or two after Katrina, they had school board members getting arrested, going to jail for things. Like they have one, I think, was a board president.
No. Well, Chris will be right back. But I think, this whole idea of, funding. So one, we should, and I think this is why we have to continue to fight on multiple levels. Yes. Choice and funding. So I was a principal at a charter school, and our students still would look at the issues and say, hey, we're going to the Capitol and we're going to demand more funding for all schools, because it's very easy to not fund it and then say, oh, well, this is making it, you're going to have less money now because of those uppity Negroes demanded choice. And
why you fighting for the uppity Negroes, bro?
Yo, man, we gotta. Those are my peoples.
I see Michelle Johnson. She got it right in the comments. She said, see, COINTELPRO comes after Chris when he starts talking about certain stuff. I talk about the real thing. All of a sudden, StreamYard is like, nah, Negro, you got to get out of here.
Censor yourself.
Censor yourself. All right. So you don't buy the school choice siphons money away. I hate the word siphon, because let's just deal on things that are insulting for a second. It's really insulting to say that people of color making a choice to move their child from one place to another is not about them or their family or their being human. It's about siphoning money from one system to another. You're not even a face. You're not a real person. It's just a siphon. It's one system against another. They don't say that when white people, hundreds of thousands of them just moved and built these things called the suburbs. When they built the suburbs, that wasn't called siphoning.
That was ingenuity.
That was westward expansion. That was innovation, But when I do it, it's called siphoning. Yeah. It almost makes you a thief.
Yeah,
it makes you a thief.
But But the one thing is, man, they are so consistent, right? Like, and this is why I think history is so important. When you look at anytime Black people organized and demanded something, people told them, you are destroying our way of life. You're destroying American values. You're destroying public institutions, right? Our Negroes are happy, right? They would tell Dr. King, our Negroes are happy. Don't come agitating, right? And they would even, like, the context of it all is that, no, people are fine being oppressed. People are fine with the way that this power dynamic that we have. That's the same argument, same mindset now, today. It's just continued. It's just about different things, but a lot of the same things. So anytime you improve it, they're going to say like, oh, you're destroying what our, and it was like, just say that institution that you talking about we're destroying, does it not deserve to be destroyed? Does it not deserve?
Is it like, not just invest more? Us? Is it not just destroying us? I like what you're saying right now. Wouldn't a good answer be so? And, that's like people saying you're destroying the police departments. you're destroying the courts, you're destroying the tax system, you're destroying the IRS, you're destroying. Well, what?
Yeah,
Like it don't make any sense to me.
yeah.
All right. So another thing that you hear about school choice is it is related to the last point. The last point that we just made was around you're siphoning money away from the school system and you're destroying an institution. But that goes a step further, and it starts to sound like compassion when they say, "But what about the kids you leave behind?" Right? Like they are without, like they're left in worse and worse circumstances. That feels a little bit more like something that you would be sympathetic to. Like, if we all leave, but there are going to be some kids left behind, their circumstances are going to get worse and worse with us being gone. Are you moved by that as a rebuttal to school choice?
I mean, I think no. I mean, and the reason why is because I've never had a singular fight like, oh, only like I'm all about improving everything. I'm all about, funding for more, and got to do what we can. When, we talk about that, the parable of the river, right? Like there's some things that just has to happen. And so
what's the parable of the river?
So the parable of the river is basically, somebody sees these children being thrown in the river, and people are helping to pull them out. And then a group says, they start running upstream, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? Come back here. We're trying to pull these kids out. And they're like, we're going to see who's throwing them in. We're moving upstream.
Wow.
Yes, y'all should continue doing what you're doing, improving that, and we need to build other things. So if I can have the sophistication in my strategy to say, yes, we're going to put pressure on what exists, and we're going to build our own at the same time, and we're going to support people, whether they're homeschooling or find scholarships to go to private. If we're doing all of that, I don't see any problems, with that at all. And so I think it's always, sometimes they want to flatten, folks. They want to flatten strategies. They want to believe that you can't have multi-tiered strategies and tactics. And I think that's just disingenuous. And from my perspective, you can do all. It's not like, oh, if you're doing this, you don't believe in this, or if you're doing this, that can't happen as well. But I don't agree with, I don't agree with that. I think so. And again, following history, should Harriet not helped 100 something folks? Should William Still?
What about the ones
not
left
help
behind, Sharif?
Yeah, like don't leave. Mm-hmm. Don't do leave. Anything outside of that because of this group, and we know that would be a bad move. That would be a bad strategy.
Yes. So for all of the women watching us in our comments section, with this last analogy, you are the Harriets of our time. You are getting our kids to safe pastures. I see you with a shotgun running through the field, and don't let anybody tell you, what about the ones you're leaving behind, as if that's supposed to make you stop getting some of our kids to freedom.
And it's the only argument that they give us, because they left, as you said, 100-something thousand. They think about, they ain't blink an eye when they were doing that. But as soon as you do it, they want to shine the spotlight. Oh, you left people. Like, where are you shining the spotlight from, Joker?
I just want to be clear too. Like, freedom of movement has been a Black strategy forever. When you are in a place that you don't want to be in, you get up and you leave. That's how people got to the North. That's how people built cities. That's how Black people build entire communities outside of the South. You don't like what you're doing, so I'm going to go to Oakland. I don't like what y'all are. I don't like you having me sharecropping down here, so I'm going to go work in a factory in Chicago, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine applying that argument to the Great Migration?
And now the migration's going another direction. Now Black folks are leaving the North and going to the South. Mm-hmm. Like, listen, I'm sick of paying your housing causes for your Northern racism up here. I'm about to go build a suburb in Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, or somewhere else,
Listen, all this stuff is still traced back to mindsets, right? Cicely Tyson just died, right? This icon in our community. And when I was younger, I would read this book, and I forget the name of it, but I think she starred in a movie about it later, and I'm blanking on the book. But one of the scenes in the story was that when people were leaving, this was after, emancipation, and they were leaving these farms. They didn't want to get stuck in the sharecropping thing. They saw it early, and they were leaving. The KKK was finding them and attacking them for leaving. That whole idea that you have the audacity to determine where you want to live, where you want to go, where you want to be educated, and so it's that same train of thought, and it's never applied to themselves. And so I'll remember the book, but the book was so good, and it was one haunting story that everybody, the character that she played, everybody got killed except her and this little boy that she ended up raising. She wasn't related to him, but she ended up raising because they were off hiding and sleep. It was nighttime, and the KKK came and crashed their encampment and killed everybody, and they were the only ones left, a teenage girl and this little boy. Right. And so it just when I hear that argument, it takes me, there's certain things I read when I was young. I'm like, that seems like that they're talking about self-improvement. They're talking about independence, self-determination. And they got, attacked, pilloried. And it's a lot of times the same thing while they exercise, because they said, hey, if you leave, that doesn't benefit us. Forget if it benefits you, it doesn't benefit us. And so I still think it goes back to whose perspective and experiences are missing.
So yes,
Pansy, autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. Yo, if y'all haven't read,
I read that. You were talking about?
Yeah, Miss Jane Pittman.
Yeah, the movie was better.
No, the book was. I think I did see the movie, but it wasn't until I was older. When I was a kid, it was the book. Man, that book, I read that so many times. Man, just thinking about those children. Was always just
for people watching. As a rule in life, the movie is always better.
What? Yo, nobody believes that.
Just to be contrarian about it.
I've not seen that. I've not seen that play out yet.
The application, what you just said, I think is really important because the fight to keep us in certain schools is not really a fight about so when people say, if you leave, what are you doing to the system? That's the question. It makes me think, so my kid's just a body. My kid is just a head count. Like, what do they call it? The average daily attendance or whatever. That's the number that you care about, which is very much like a slave plantation register, a roster of who you have on deck. And when your numbers start going down, your system, your pensions become a problem, your funds become a problem, whatever. So your goal is, whether we are educating your head or not, we got to keep your body in the building, right? So it's a body count. Right, it's public education body count. Because if you lose body count, I don't care if y'all don't like being here or together, or you're not learning anything or whatnot. Your body's got to be here because this is what we make our middle class money off of, right?
Listen, I remember when I think I was a young teacher, and I remember that ADA, that you were talking about. At some point, the city got. There was some kind of agreement that they were just going to take cheese buses, the yellow buses, and go around and collect kids who are, truant. Forget like why, not fix the reason why kids are like, I ain't going in there, but like just round them up. And I used to wonder, like, well, if they address why they're leaving, if they address the engagement thing, maybe this piece wouldn't be such an issue. Right. But they spend all their energy and time and coordination just taking cheese buses and grabbing kids because, technically it's illegal and all of this kind of stuff. But I was like, you know what? They never want to put their finger on what's actually happening. What's the root cause? Look at it, find the root cause and address the root cause, not the symptoms. You can find things that assuage the symptoms, but address the root cause. One of our councilwomen, put out a thing yesterday about what her priorities were going to be. And I was like, all right, great. Let me check it out. So it was like, things about a lot of COVID related stuff, totally understandable. And it said, for schools, we're going to demand that they be able to come back safe. And we're going to deal with the mental and emotional support. I'm like, wait a minute, that's the end of the sentence? You're not going to talk about reading
after that?
Like, wait a minute, you're not going to talk about like anything else like that, like that's it. And I was just like they just and and they're smart people, so it's not that they don't get it, but it's like, you
Hmm.
know what, well, that piece, that's too hard. Like, then we got to talk about teacher training, we got to talk about professional development, we got to talk about quality teachers, we got to talk about diversification, we got to talk about all these other things. We ain't doing that, you know. And so I think that happens over and over and over again. People don't want to get to the root cause, right? So when people are leaving, they just say stop them from leaving, and they come up with all the arguments that you came up with, but they want to ignore. They don't want to have the discipline of mind and aligned action to look at the root cause and design the response to that.
For me, the root cause and the solution are wrapped up in this discussion. The root cause of all of it to me is common. The common school was always a lie, and we should not be going to school together. And here's my reason why. And school choice to me fixed that, allows me to find a school that works for me or whatnot. The reason I say the common school as an idea is a lie is because what that does is that sets up a situation where people of different beliefs and different faiths and creeds and backgrounds are made to have to agree on things that they'll never agree on, which means they will never be stable. The schools will never be stable. We will argue about the curriculum, the teachers, how to train the teachers, what they should be learning, what they should be teaching. The argument
Mm.
right now about the science of reading, you have people who literally say there's no such thing as the science of reading. And you have people that say the science of reading is the kiss of death. If you don't look at it right now, we're going to keep not teaching kids how to read. That's a perfect example of an argument, a stupid argument that the common school will have for 10, 20, or 30 years, where some small school somewhere will have it figured out. If you don't want to teach this way, y'all can all leave, right? Like, because at this school, we're going to teach what science tells us to teach in terms of how to read. You could do what you want in school B, C. And then as a parent, I get to choose the school that has gotten out of the dumb arguments and is now having some success, and I get to choose it. And when I choose it, it is bolstering it, right? So we get to win that way. If you take away my right to choice, you're putting us all in a bucket, like a fight club of sorts, and we're
Mm.
going to argue about the curriculum. How do you teach history? How do you teach reading and science? And should the teachers have 10 years of experience before they get into a high poverty classroom, or no experience? Can we have teachers that get certified through alternative means or not? These are things that a lot of private schools don't have these discussions. They don't even have to have like discussions like, are you a good teacher? Right? Okay, we're going to try you out for 6 months a year. You're doing really good. State comes along and says, yeah, but they're not certified in such and such. Yeah, but a lot of your people that are certified in such and such are having bad results, and this particular teacher is doing well, and we only have 15 teachers, so we don't need to worry about your system. We don't care. That to me is I wonder if we're set up to fail, and if school choice to me is the only way to get around the dumb arguments that you're going to have on purpose if you try and put everybody in one big system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, aligned philosophy, you know, is really important, and I also think that it is going to be really hard to not fight on all, you know, on all fronts, because, you know, right now the way the system is, I don't see, it's going to be very few New Orleans situations, right? It's going to be very few situations where people are creating things. What I'm hoping is that we find ways to build our own institutions, like that. The first level of choice is that our communities, Black communities, is who we're talking about, build their own institutions. To me, that's the first choice. Like, because I think right now we're, you know, if it's like a singular school or a boutique school, like what we need is to build independent schools and systems, you know, for our people. Because to me, it's a matter of self-determination. You know, there's no way around that. If we do not have our own institutions, if we do not build our own schools, if we do not, in the meantime, you know, inject our people, you know, these liberators, into a system of oppression, like I don't see a way forward, you know. And I can't help but, again, back to when you talk about the origins of public school or what the lie was, and when I think about, like, you know, Thomas Jefferson, who was a early proponent of, you know, a sort of public school system,
Mm-hmm.
and his
Mm-hmm.
intent, you know, because it still goes back to intention, right? His intention was to rake the geniuses from the muck.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he said this could be a great sorting system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? It still is.
Yeah,
It still is.
he really believed in that rape was love.
Yeah.
Yeah, in his personal life, like
Hmm.
he liked black women.
Hmm.
Anyways, I'm sorry. I just had to add additional stuff. Anytime
No.
someone mentions Thomas Jefferson
Yeah,
in
you
a
bring
light
that
of what
up.
he
It's
really, I bring it
hmm.
up every single
Hmm.
time. He was a sociopath and a rapist, and I don't care who doesn't like it. If you don't like it, we could go to different schools. You can go to Thomas Jefferson Middle School, right? And I get to go to Marcus Garvey Academy, and we don't have a problem. School choice. See, it fixes everything, right? We don't have to believe the same thing. We don't have to go to the same schools. I like what you just said, though. School choice has to be more than just about making the choice. It also is an opportunity to build the institutions to serve yourself, right? We keep relying on other people. Stokely Carmichael and others were talking about counter institutions in the 60s and the 70s. They weren't talking about let's just join everybody else's institution and wish for the best, right? Like independence is made of like building your own stuff sometimes. And maybe
Yeah.
school choice gets us there. I love a point here. I know we got to run, but a point that Jason Allen made, who is in Atlanta. He says, even with choice, we are not forsaking traditional public schools that need innovation and much change to improve educational outcomes for Black and brown students. And what I like about this point is oftentimes when we talk about school choice, we're talking about it in terms of like it's just the regular schools versus everybody else. But let's not forget within traditional public education and systems, there is a lot of choice for us to support or not support. There are
Hmm.
alternative schools. There are magnets and open schools and special schools of, talent, specialty talent schools and other things going on. We have open enrollment here in Minnesota, which basically means like if you can get your kid there and there's a seat, you can go out to the suburbs or wherever you want to go, right? Like you're not just limited to your district.
Yeah.
We also have something called post-secondary options in Minnesota, which means starting in, I want to say it's ninth grade or whatever, you can start taking classes at the college if you want to
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
go for free, right?
Hmm.
So choice looks a lot of different ways, even within the traditional system. So people in traditional systems shouldn't
Yeah.
just put a hand out and be like, no, we don't want none of that choice stuff. So
Yeah. No, I love that point. I'm so glad he brought it up and you reinforced it that it's not, people think choice. They're like, oh, charters, as Dr. Fuller and many others say, there's a continuum of choice. It's not all just about charters. It's a whole lot of ways. Like, how are we supporting Black homeschoolers? How are we supporting, magnet schools? Why is it that most cities, as soon as you look at the overall population of the district, is one thing. You look at the magnet schools, the population is very, very different. You look at the talent and gifted classes, even if there was a diverse school, the talented, mentally gifted classes do not look like it. The diverse school, the special ed classes do not look like it. So, there's a lot of things within. It doesn't just mean one aspect of it. Yeah. And I think, in the meantime, and I know somebody else wrote that is really hard sometimes just to think about building choice. I think one of the ways that you do it is you start small. Like, we can have detox centers that we talked about before. That's choice.
wow.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm choosing,
Yeah.
like, hey, I don't have another option, or this city doesn't have that thing or this thing, but you know what? The community is rallying. Here's the time to talk about the village, right? Be the village. Create those detox centers, right? That where you are mitigating some of the harm that may have been done. Create reading centers. Like every Black community, create reading centers, adjacent around your school where you can follow the reading signs. You can teach Black students, and we can have that massive, spike in literacy that we saw in the early 1900s. Let's do that. Create reading centers, and they can start with 5 kids in the neighborhood. Find the people who know about it. Let's get training. Let's do all of that. So there are other ways to exercise choice, so people don't have to think like, oh, I got to create a K-12 school, right off the back, right? How do I do that? Like we do it by exerting self-determination. At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. Exert your self-determination on behalf of our children, or our future is doomed. Like it's no ifs, ands, and buts around it.
Amazing final word from Sharif El Mekki. This has been another amazing Freedom Friday. Assert yourself, your self-determination. It doesn't have to be perfect from the get-go, but you do have to start somewhere. You
Start
do have to
some.
start on the way to freedom. Even if you're not there yet, you got to start somewhere. And for
Look,
me, come on.
start somewhere.
You know,
Listen, we used to join on Dr. Suzette Schultz's porch. You know, my cousin, and she had an indoor porch, and it was full of little black kids, 4 and 5 years old, and we were learning how to read. You know, she had a reading center, a detox center.
you
Right?
can start with 5 people, 2 people,
Yep.
3 people, whatever. Movements start very small. I'm all for it. I'm here for it. Listen, and the way I feel about school choice is, everybody can talk about the other fancy issues in life that are more further downstream. I love your river analogy of, yeah, we could keep pulling babies out of the river, or we can go upstream and find out who's throwing them in the river in the first place. That's an amazing
And do both,
analogy. I'm
right?
going to
And do
keep it. You
both.
could do both, but I think somebody's got to act. I think people are more willing to do the latter. I mean, to do the let's pull the babies out of the river. And it's going to be a smaller group of people who are going to be like, maybe we should go up the river a little bit
Yeah.
and find out who's throwing them in. I love
Shout
that.
out to Mama Gwen. She was pushing that in Connecticut. And it reminds me of Dr. King when he said it's one thing to flip a coin to a beggar. It's another thing to figure out why is there a beggar on the corner.
Right, right. There's a Jewish principle around that too. Is like there are different levels of charity within Jewish culture. I don't have time to go through all of them now, but some of the levels are just around what you do out of the goodness of your heart. Some of the levels are around what you do because your faith demands it of you, God demands it of you, and you're obligated to do it. And one of those levels is, instead of just looking for justice, it is to question, why is this injustice that I'm trying to fix? Why does it exist in the first place? And kind of what you just said, the beggar analogy, they do have a thing around, you have to give to the poor, but you also have to ask, why are there poor people in the first place, right? I will say this about school choice. I'm not going to stop saying the idea that I think that if we get this right and we just jump on board with it or whatnot, it sets us off. It sets in motion real freedom for us, bigger than we possibly could know. And because of that, this is my Malcolm X feeling about it. I'm for it. I don't care who's against it, right? And whoever is with me on this. So we talk about, black folks and white folks need to do, blah, 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 whatever. Listen, there are going to be some white folks. If you are on board with my children being academically free and free to actually learn in the way that I want, we are family, right? And black folks, if you are against my children being academically free and being off on the path that I determine for them, we are not family, right? So I just want to be clear about this. Like, we talk oftentimes in black and white terms or whatnot, but when it comes to our freedom, there are very clearly some people that kinfolk aren't always skin folk, or other way around, and white folks aren't always the oppressor in these situations, because there's some people right now, if I said I want to start a black school, there'll be some people that would be saying, no, we just gotta keep our kids in the regular schools and whatnot, and we got to call that out on a pretty regular basis. We got to be honest about this.
Why are you doing the black stuff?
Right? There's a very famous journalist who is famous for believing in integration a lot, who said very clearly to me something very close to that, right? Like, you can do that pseudo black nationalist thing if you want to, but that has never worked and it's never gonna work, right? It's like, okay, sis, well, you go on with your multi-platinum record of journalism that you got going on. I'm sure they all love you. Anyways, to my friends and family who have been here for this hour and 7 minutes watching us, trying to talk about our freedom, knowing that we are still not free, even on this Freedom Friday. We appreciate you coming every week, offering amazing things in the comments. I will go back and read them all, try and respond to some of them after our show today. Sharif El-Mekki, anything you want to point people to this week that they should pay attention to, that they should watch, that they should support?
Well, I'll definitely put that article, that Chad sent me. And check out Philly 7th Ward this February. Every day we want to uplift a Hall of Fame black educator. So we're going to try to get 28 in. It's going to be a real, we're starting behind, but we want to make sure from February 1st all the way to the end, every day we're uplifting an educator activist. someone who was not only educating our children, but they were trying to do damage to the system that was oppressing the children in the first place. They were going up the river. They were pulling kids out, and they were sprinting up the river in their
shortest
words
month
and
of the
actions.
year. There we go. Shortest month of the year. 28 days. I'm not doing Black History Month. Just so y'all know, I'm doing Black History Year. So, and there's only 1 month where we don't do it, which is February. So there you go.
Listen, February,
opposite,
Black History is all year round. February,
right.
we just the blackest, you know?
That's,
so you can look at it that way
okay,
too.
all right. Well, I appreciate y'all. The only thing I will point out to folks is the 8 Black Hands on Sunday at was it 9 o'clock Central Time? We're doing our show this week, 8 o'clock Central Time. I'm sorry. The 8 Black Hands show. It's our 100th episode of the 8 Black Hands podcast.
Congratulations.
Yes, we made it. And it's going to be a special 2-hour show. 1 hour of it, the first hour, we're going to have a very special guest. Killer Mike is joining the 100th episode to help us celebrate 100 shows in. So please join us for that. Look on the 8 Black Hands Facebook group. You can find us and find out more about it. Thank you all for watching, and